We've got a market map that we are religious about. Anytime we see a new company, we're on the website, we're categorizing them by use case and user so that when we go to actually source talent, we can not only, we're not generic in our outreach approach. It's really, really targeted so that the candidates that we're approaching are like an exact drop and drag fit for our clients.
Welcome to the All-in Recruitment podcast by Manatal, where we explore best practices, learnings, and trends with leaders in the recruitment space. If you like our content so far, please subscribe to our channels on YouTube and Spotify to stay tuned for our weekly episodes. I'm your host, Lydia, and this week we have Michael Abdul, a FinTech recruiter who's just started his own firm, Volition. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you, Lydia. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
So, Michael, why recruiting? What's kept you in this space?
I think there's just a big element of luck that goes into people's careers. That's the reason that I've stayed around. So I think like most recruiters, fell into it after university, right? I actually took my first job with the intention of doing it for about 6 months and then going traveling and getting what I considered a real job. So most of my friends from university went into like Big Four consulting or investment companies. And so I thought, I'll do that and I'll do it for 6 months, get some money and then go on get a real graduate scheme job. 12 years later, I'm still here.
That's a long 6 months. Huh?
It's a long 6 months and I genuinely love it. Like, I think that's the main thing. Like, that's why I'm still here. I love the role. So there was an element of luck, right? So in 2012, I was hired by a company called Aston Carter, which was an amazingly run business, had a great culture. It was a lot of fun. And we were very good. They were the top supplier to the majority of the tier 1 banks in London at the time. And I sat down as a 21-year-old graduate, not really knowing what was going on. And basically, it was the busiest desk and one of the busiest times for the contract organisation there. So a few months after I started, all of the banks had to hire hundreds and hundreds of contractors to remediate like the mis-selling of interest rate swaps. And so pure luck, I was super busy, had success really early on, which I feel like a lot of recruiters, a lot of people join agencies where that's just not possible. So I got extremely lucky, and that's kind of what, made me think I'm definitely not going to go traveling now, right? I was doing really well. I was doing better financially, and I think having more fun than all of my friends that got the real jobs in the Big Four and, with the London Stock Exchange and investment companies. So I stayed there. I was there for 3.5 years, had loads and loads of fun. Was getting to the point where they were saying, right, do you want to go in and manage a team? It's only like 24 at the time, right? I wanted to just carry on having fun. So my thing was I wanted to move abroad. I didn't really care where. I just wanted to live in another country. So ended up moving to New York, which was, again, amazing fun. Went with one of my best friends in the company and did that for 2.5 years. And that was a much more challenging time in that, in London, I'd sat down on the busiest desk. There were jobs everywhere. We didn't really have to do any business development. It was dead easy. Moved to New York, was basically given a phone and told to build a market and sign some of these large banking institutions. So for the first time, that first year it was tough. There was a bit of hardship there. By the end, I was there for about 2.5 years in New York. The last 6 to 12 months, I was seeing good success, and all of that initial work and outreach and sales type work was coming to fruition. But I just realized that I didn't want to, that role was very sales heavy and very client heavy. And I really enjoy kind of doing the hands-on work, sourcing candidates, finding people. So kind of knew that role wasn't the one for me. But yeah, I've had a great time kind of doing recruitment. Absolutely love it. And then I suppose what keeps me here today and still doing it and still doing Volition is I just get like a really good blend of everything that I need to be happy in my job. Doing recruitment's really multifaceted. So I get the buzz of signing new clients. I get the buzz of making placements, which is kind of like transactional, but it's addictive. Like it's such an addictive feeling to keep doing that. Like I get to meet and speak to the smartest people on the planet every day.
And now that real job, or that so-called real job, has translated to a company for you, and you've
Yeah,
created that. So it's Volition, right? And how old is it now?
yeah. 16 months. So we started it January 2023. Yeah, we've had really good success. Like, I think the first couple of quarters were hard. I had non-compete clauses with some of my clients, and in FinTech there was the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, the Credit Suisse collapse, funding was drying up. Everyone knows that last year was quite a tough year, so there was like immediate hardship. But then from probably like August or September time, we've been really busy. I think we've actually kind of really aligned our value proposition. I think the market understands that we can help, where we're so focused on just kind of capital markets vendors. So yeah, it's going from strength to strength. Hope to have a little bit more growth in terms of people and stuff. Said not hugely ambitious, but getting a few more people on board in the not too distant future, because we've got so much demand now. It's great.
And 16 months, and your focus is on FinTech specifically, right?
Yeah. So just capital markets, technology companies. So companies that sell tech or data to investment banks and asset managers. So yeah, it's a very small subset of financial services. Then actually, when you get into it, like I've got a market map of about 450 companies that sell this tech or data to these institutions, and those are just the ones that have a presence in the UK, that have people in the UK. Globally, there are thousands and thousands, and there are more and more springing up all the time. So it's a good, constantly changing market segment. Whereas like doing what I was doing before with the investment banks, the top 30 investment banks are the top 30 investment banks every year, right? They don't change too often. So yeah, I'm really I enjoy this market. It's good fun.
How do you keep up with the changes that's happening in this industry, and look out for the kind of talent that you're supposed to get?
Yeah, so we've got a market map that we are religious about. Anytime we see a new company, we're on the website, we're categorizing them by use case and user, so that when we go to actually source talent, we can not only we're not generic in our outreach approach. It's really, really targeted, so that the candidates that we're approaching are like an exact drop and drag fit for our clients. So yeah, it's just staying on top of the market maps and just really like continuing to like keep an eye out on all the different changes in the companies that are out there.
Right. And Michael, when it comes to, finding the perfect candidate or finding the perfect talent to suit the needs of the company, it might be a bit of a unicorn or a kind of, what do you call that?
Yeah.
Purple squirrel, is that the term for it?
Yeah.
So that's pretty tough, and that's if it happens, it's great. But have there been instances in which you're looking for that particular rare kind of talent, but you can't find them, and then you find several other candidates with transferable skills? Would there be an opportunity to look at people with adjacent skills that could be transferred to a specific role in FinTech?
So to begin with, right, we are always trying to find that purple squirrel, that person who's doing the exact role, has had great success in a competitor and wants to move across. But like this market, I said there's 450 companies out there. But as I said, when you like nail them down into specific use cases, specific client segments, there might only be 10 or 15. And if you've approached everyone who does that exact role in those companies, they're not interested, then you do have to broaden the net. I think being so specialized in this vendor community definitely allows me to be able to give advice to clients and say, this skill set, here's the 14 people that do this in London, none of them are interested, or they're over budget. Why don't you try this as an example? So I think something that's happened recently is like we've had a number of partnerships roles. Now, partnerships directors in these companies, there's generally only one of them at each firm, whereas they would have a 10 to 15 person sales team. So an example was, I've approached all of these partnerships candidates. Would you consider these people that are doing sales for 80% of their role, but partnerships for 20%? And the answer from the client was yes, like we'd absolutely be open to that. So I think that definitely is the wiggle room, and being so ingrained in the market allows us to understand where the wiggle room probably is.
Right. And going back to your firm, Volition, you started it and it's been running for 16 months. And how does data and technology, or rather the use of data, really empowered or helped your firm to grow at the scale it's growing?
For sure. I think I've been in recruitment since 2012, and even in that 12 years, technology and data has changed vastly. So, if you think of it now, where LinkedIn is so prominent, recruiters live in the age of perfect information, right? Like you can go on LinkedIn and the recruiter across the road has access to those same candidates. Whereas when I first started, it was very much about like who's in your database, who do you have access to as an agency that your competitors don't? That's basically gone now, right? So I think that's why kind of being so focused, being so hyper focused on a specific segment really helps out because we're always in touch with our like, particular candidates. Because I think those bigger agencies who have now got access to millions of different candidates who focus on a whole massive ecosystem of technology or work with all different sorts of clients, they're just not in touch with those candidates as much and they're not as well known in those markets. The other thing that I think data has led to is the proliferation of small recruitment agencies like Volition that are really focused. So 10 years ago, you would need to be part of a big agency to have these terms in place with these massive institutions. You would need access to the database to do your role well. Whereas now everything is on LinkedIn, everything is on other job boards and Indeed and all that kind of stuff. So, I think data has empowered actual good senior recruiters to start their own companies more and more. And it's something, maybe it's just my age, like being in my early 30s, it's something I've seen whole swathes of people do recently. So I think that's good. And then, I mean, in terms of data, it's just being able to track and analyze everything that you do now. Technology has been great for that. Nowadays, like all of the systems that we have can track and collate and run analytics on who we're reaching out to and what we're doing. So you can do it with LinkedIn projects.
Yeah, so at your firm, Volition, I mean, do you have your systems in place already in terms of technology such as ATS and CRM, as you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, so I obviously work with you guys at Manatal. The key reason that I selected Manatal and something that has changed so much is how intuitive the UI is. The UI is amazing, right? That the Kanban board kind of drag and drop and single click to do things is phenomenal. Versus what I started with, it saves me so much time. I can track all of my processes through just drag and drop, which is amazing. So I've set Manatal up as my ATS CRM. I'm very happy with you guys. I think it's a great piece of technology. The product team are good. That's a lifesaver. That allows me to like contact someone once and have a couple of follow-ups go out to them. Most people don't respond until the second or third kind of touch point. So I really enjoyed that. And then obviously everyone's on LinkedIn. I have various like recruiter and premium licenses with LinkedIn, which I would like to cut down if possible, but it is the number one tool at the moment, right?
So all this technology allows you to manage your own firm and also be super hands-on like you like to with recruiting, right? It's at this point, this is where the company is, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, exactly that. So Volition's just Jack and I, right? So we're both very hands-on. We have our clients that come to us for their needs, and it is us two recruiting on it. I had a client actually just a few weeks ago say, "Oh, you've outsourced that, or you've hired juniors to do the recruiting part." And I was like, "No." But I actually think that the kind of USP of working with Volition is that regardless of the mandate, you're going to have someone who's got over 10 years of experience recruiting finance and fintech professionals in Jack or I. So we don't really have any plans to change that. But yes, like the technology that we have set up allows us to be hands-on, to track everything that we're doing, whilst not spending hours a day doing boring administrative tasks.
In terms of positioning yourself or a new company, or a rather, as you mentioned, a small recruiting firm against the bigger, more established players, I mean, how do you navigate that kind of competitive landscape when it comes to fintech recruiting?
Yeah, there are like 5 or 6 other companies in London that I know of, who I respect all of them. I think they're all pretty good brands. I'd like to think they know us, although we're definitely the smallest, right? We're trying to get in there. Look, we don't butt heads too much, right? Like it's not like you're bumping into them and you're kind of competing them on every single job. I'm very fortunate, like where I've done recruitment so long, I've got a lot of relationships that are a decade old now, so have a lot of exclusive jobs and all that kind of thing. So yeah, we're not constantly treading on each other's toes. I think a lot of the fintech vendor ecosystem has historically been serviced by these kind of big agencies like Aston Carter that don't have a really niche specialism. And so kind of displacing those and proving value over and above these big agencies that work with loads of banks and hedge funds and then also fintechs, that's generally quite easy. And I think, from a first kind of intro scoping call with clients, I think, I can get enough into the conversation to show that I know this market and that I can add value to them over and above these larger companies.
Mhm.
And if I am competing against one of the 5 or 6 other firms that are kind of specialists in this market, then I know I have to compete. I have to work hard and I have to do well on the role. But yeah, that's it really.
So Mike, you've had an in-depth look at what it takes to be a successful recruiter in the fintech scene, create your niche, and make sure that you are a specialist in a specific area. So what advice would you give someone who's wanting to start out in this space today, and maybe even someone who's had the experience for a few years and wants to start their own business?
So that's a really good question, right? So in the last 5-10 years, I've interviewed 300 or 400 trainee level recruiters, I'd say. And so this is something that comes up a lot in interviews.
Mhm.
The number one thing is I think the recruitment industry gets wrong is that it flashes about these kind of commissions and targets, and they make out that everyone can be making crazy money in their first year. That gets a lot of people into it for the wrong reasons. Like recruitment, as I've kind of evidenced by doing 12 years, is a career. You need to be in it for the long haul, and you're not going to get anywhere in a couple of years. You need to see all of these relationships, strategic relationships, people that you might need something from, then they're going to need something from you. And it's like real kind of give and take. Whereas I think a lot of kind of juniors that they come into it, they think it's going to be easy, particularly if they've got good academics or whatever it might be. They think it's going to be an easy job. They're 5-6 months in and they just don't realize how much hard work goes into it. So I just always say to people, getting good at the job takes years. Getting okay at it, you need to be in it for a year. If you want to be amazing at something really quickly or do something easy that's not labor intensive, just pick something else. The other thing that I'd mention is there's, I think there's the common statistic is there's 40,000 recruitment agencies in the UK. So I don't know how many there are, but if you're a junior, being able to kind of discern and pick the ones that actually have a track record for promoting juniors and getting them billing well is a really important thing to choose if you want to get into this space. There are so many companies out there that hire lots and lots of trainees, knowing full well that a lot of them won't last or won't get through the training period or through their probation. So being able to pick those companies that actually really kind of nurture talent is important. I think a lot of juniors as well, they're like, oh, what about kind of structured L&D? In this job, structured L&D counts less. I feel like just being able to kind of speak to who is my hiring manager going to be in the recruitment agency, what's their track record like of getting juniors promoted and billing well, and just getting that information so that you can make the right choice. Because if you're like me, when I was interviewing for recruitment companies, I'd interviewed with about 15 different firms, right?
Mhm.
I didn't know that. So I just took the offer from the person that I got on with the most, as opposed to really understanding which ones are going to help me the most, which leaders are going to help me the most. So yeah, there's that. And then with regards to kind of starting your own company, the thing that's worked most well for Volition and that I kind of alluded to earlier on was having a niche and having a value proposition. A lot of people kind of go into it and say, I'm a technology recruiter. There's thousands of different types of technology out there, that hundreds of different skill sets and job titles and things that you can be kind of recruiting for. And then when they speak to a engineering manager or CTO, they just don't have the ability to get into the details enough because they've picked too large of a field. And so that a lot of these people, they come from large agencies where you might have 5 or 6 different desks doing this, and they think that they can do it all. It's impossible. It's just too much work. And the other thing is just work smart. So if you pick a niche, right? If I generate 5 candidates for a job, the likelihood is that I can then use those 5 candidates again 3 weeks later when I'm contacted about a similar job. So you're just working smart. You're just cutting down your sourcing time all the time. Whereas a lot of people are just constantly working and battling and working different skill sets and different roles. And then once they're done, they've shortlisted 3 or 4 candidates. They're never going to speak to those candidates again. So if you are looking to start out, it's just making sure that you have a niche, that you have a value proposition, If you're super ambitious, like more ambitious than I am, for example, with Volition, have your own niche and your own vertical that you really want to focus on, and then map out other verticals that you can have as your growth, and then insert people into those verticals to look after them. So I'm not saying limit the size that your company can be. It can be as big as you want, but to begin with, you need to have a value proposition that clients are going to buy into, that you can speak to, and that the people are going to realize that this person knows what they're doing. They can help me out really quickly in a conversation.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thanks so much for these insights, these valuable anecdotes that have come from your experiences, and also best of luck with Volition. And before we end, drop us your contact details or maybe a website that someone can check out Volition after the show.
Thanks, Lydia. Yeah, sure. It's www.volition.work, and my email address is mike@volition.work.
Thank you again, Mike. And we have been in conversation with Michael Abdul, a FinTech recruiter and founder of Volition. Thank you for joining us. And remember to subscribe, stay tuned for more weekly episodes from All in Recruitment.